What's up, guys? It's KB. Make sure you subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel. Click the bell icon down below so you don't miss a single video from us. And thanks for tuning in to another video from Underground Sports Philadelphia. Now let's get into it.
Philadelphia, baby, you're going to love it. Best sports fans in the world. Actually, the worst, but that's what makes them the best.
What is going on, OTB Nation? Welcome into episode number 319 of the award-nominated, honorably mentioned number 9 NCAA ranked, and of course viewable on YouTube, which you should, because DJ's got a whole new POV set up for you. Outside the Box podcast, the official lacrosse podcast on the Underground Sports Philadelphia Podcast Network. It's KB and Deej coming at you. We got a loaded show as we head into the final week of the NLL regular season. The full PLL schedule has dropped and bye weeks are confirmed. Mike and Paul dropped their podcast. We'll talk about that and the topics they discussed this week, which will probably be cemented in topic every single week for as long as they do that show. And of course, we will also talk the college game with Portal Jones. But before we get into all of that, make sure you guys are following us on the socials at OTB Laxpod. That's on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Facebook.com/OTB Laxpod. You can follow Deej on Twitter at SCS_NextGreat. Follow me at KBIZZL311. Subscribe to the podcast feed on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts in audio form. But those two in particular really help the show continue to grow because those are the metrics that we get fed most directly from all of the podcast production companies and everything like that, where our RSS feed lives. Leave a 5-star rating and review. It goes a long way for helping this show continue to grow, helps more people find Outside the Box and Underground Sports Philadelphia as a whole. So keep subscribing, leave those 5-star ratings and reviews, because we're closing in on a milestone as well with Spotify listeners on the pod. So if you aren't already, subscribe to the pod on Spotify, subscribe on Apple, leave those 5-star reviews, and of course, subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel, youtube.com/@Underground Sports Philadelphia. That is where you get full video episodes of this show every single week, full video episodes of every show on our network, clips, shorts, live streams, original video content. It's all on the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel. We are currently at 762 subscribers. Let's get that number up. Let's get to 800 before the end of April. And of course, leave a like, leave a comment down below. Your thoughts on everything we discuss on the episode this week and anything we may have missed. Let us know in the YouTube comment section. And of course, subscribe to the Outside the Box podcast YouTube channel as well. YouTube.com/@OTB Laxpod. That is where all of our interviews from Champ Series are currently living. Posting some clips on there as well. And that's also where our summer vlogs are going to go this summer, because we're going to vlog every single weekend that we are at. So be sure to subscribe over there, youtube.com/@OTB Laxpod, and get your merch at PHI Apparel Company, our exclusive merch partners, the best in the game. If you want to stand out in the crowd, whether you're going to an NLL playoff game, going to your favorite NLL team's game, college, getting ready for the PLL, getting ready for the summer, you need to be repping OTB, because if we see you anywhere that we are rocking OTB merch, you're a real one, and we're going to hook you up in some potential way, and definitely post you all over our socials if we see you out in the wild wearing OTB podcast merch. Go to phiapparel.co. Check out everything they have to offer, the OTB shirts and hoodies, Underground Sports Philadelphia shirts and hoodies. And if you're a Philly sports fan, they got you covered for the Eagles, the Phillies, the Flyers, the Sixers, the Union, and awesome Philly-centric merch as well. Fill up your cart when you go to check out. Use code Underground for 10% off your merch orders. Most effective and direct way to support everything we're doing here at Underground Sports Philadelphia. So go get your merch, phiapparel.co. Use code Underground for 10% off your orders. Coach Deej, we got a winning streak to talk about.
We do, for now. As you guys are listening to this, our winning streak may be over. But
we're not manifesting that, though.
As the time of recording, Kalamazoo United is currently on a 2-game win streak. We were 2-3 on the year. We won a game last Saturday, 8-7, in which I literally almost had a heart attack. We're up 8-7 with the ball, with like, I don't know, literally like 28 seconds left, and I'm like, run, just run. I got you. I'll call a timeout if you're in trouble. Kid tries to throw a pass. That pass was intercepted. That pass was taken down the field. That pass intercepted with 15 seconds left. Taken down the field. They got a shot off as time expired, and it hit the side of the net. Hit the side of the net.
Gulp.
The closest thing. I've never been more excited to see a mom goal than then, because man, was I losing it. And then we bounced back Tuesday. Huge dub, 14-5.
What's up, brother?
We actually did so well. Tuesday. We actually did so well that we were able to get a couple of our first and second year players that don't play as much sometimes. So that 14-5 victory could have easily been 26-3 or something like that. So we slowed
Special
it up.
team, special plays, special players.
No.
They should have been watching film.
They should have been. Absolutely. Check. No. We're cruising right now. We do have a game tonight as we record on Thursday. It is against a team that is pretty solid. So if we come out and play well, we get an upset, we are cruising. But I also wouldn't necessarily be surprised if KU's win streak for now was ended. We can always start another one.
And speaking of streaks, we've been on one hell of a streak covering the NLL regular season this year, and it's going to come to an end after this weekend because it is the final week of the 2023-2024 NLL regular season. But before we dive into those matchups, we got to recap the week that was week 20. What a week of games that had implications for the postseason, for the draft, for home field advantage, for playoff eliminations, and playoff clinching scenarios. I don't even know where to begin. And I know we've said this a couple times this year, but I genuinely think last week, week 20, was everything you could have hoped for and then some for a penultimate week to your season in a sports league. You had shifting in the standings, top to bottom. You had upsets. You had teams keeping their playoff dreams alive, playoff hopes snatched away. Draft pick positioning got flipped on its head, and it was quite the week in week 20 of the NLL.
More than just quite the week. I have decided that I will pass on doing a deep dive into the Calgary Roughnecks season. I had an amazing time watching my favorite team play. I pulled out a bunch of my hair. I sweated it out, and we were this close to blowing out yet another playoff berth. But so many strides with this team. They looked great this year at times. They looked bad at times. And I think this team will bounce back next year, and we'll be talking about them being back in a place that we're used to them being in, maybe the semifinals, maybe even the finals. But I'm okay with what I saw this year, and I understand change, mostly at the top, leads to a lot of trickle down, which is what I think really happened with the Calgary season. But now that their season's over, it just means I get to enjoy the rest of my last season as a true New York Riptide fan.
We do get to enjoy one final regular season game for the Riptide and potentially playoffs if things bounce their way. But the week 20 slate went like this. The Wings I gotta address this off the top because I texted Deej about it and I was like, holy shit. It's one of those moments where like you think something does happen, but until you get notified of it, you don't really know. We were pretty much notified that the Philadelphia Wings front office listens to the pod. Granted, me being a credentialed media member with them, you kind of assume that happens from time to time. But when you get a deep cut type of situation get sent to you in an email, it's pretty surreal and pretty cool. And it's just like, holy shit. So shout out to the Philadelphia Wings front office. And they got the magic number this week, Deej. They scored 13 plus and improved to 4-1 on the season when they score 13 or more goals as they take down the Colorado Mammoth 16-12 in the Loud House. A big time game that has major draft pick implications, and the Wings needed to win if they wanted to improve their draft status because they hold the Colorado Mammoth's first overall pick, first round pick this year, which as of right now is the number one pick in the draft, which is crazy to think about. We'll get to more of that later because of how it got to be that way. Toronto took care of business against Rochester 13-6. Buffalo, in a rematch of the 2019 NLL Finals, doubled up your Roughnecks in front of a sold-out Banditland 14-7. Saskatchewan, in a surprise victory, I think to a lot of people, and in big-time fashion, a 5-goal win at home against San Diego 13-8. Las Vegas, back in the win column, take down Colorado 12-11. Vancouver continues their hot streak and take down the New York Riptide 16-10. And Panther City keep their postseason hopes alive as they take down Albany 11-7. Your standings following week 20. Toronto clinches the number one overall seed at 14-3. San Diego firmly entrenched into that 2 seed. They will be the number 2 seed at 12-5. Albany at 10-7. Redacted at 10-7. Buffalo clinches a playoff spot at 10-7. Halifax clinches a playoff spot. They are 9-8. Panther City is 9-8. And if the playoffs started today, the number 8 seed would be the Vancouver Warriors at 8-9. The rest of the standings, Saskatchewan and New York, both at 8-9. Their postseason hopes are still fully alive. Deej's Calgary Roughnecks eliminated from postseason contention at 7-10. Rochester is still alive, very slim chances, but still alive because they have 2 games this coming week. They are 6-10. The Philadelphia Wings are 6-11. Vegas 5-12, and Colorado 5-12. But due to tiebreakers, with Vegas winning against Colorado this week, Colorado in the basement as they have one final game, as does Vegas. So draft pick positioning can still get flipped on its head a little bit. But Deej, what did you take away from week 20, where playoff positions are standing? And are we nervous about Albany?
You weren't already nervous about Albany?
I was nervous about them just because they're so young and how the postseason will, if you're a veteran-led team, you're more equipped for the postseason because you have that experience. But some of these losses that Albany has suffered this year have been tough, and to lose them in key spots, we could see them go from having a home game in the postseason to dropping towards the bottom of this playoff standings within the course of the next couple of days, depending on how Panther City ends up, Halifax, Buffalo, redacted. Like Albany could drop from the 3 seed to the 7 seed, which would be a wild turn of events for them. But I mean, I think for them to get to the postseason is a win in and of itself this year after the year they had last year. But it is concerning that they could be a one and done type team, depending on where they slot in the postseason.
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised that they're a one and done this year. Like we talked about all season with like kind of the flip that they made. The way they've been playing the last couple of weeks is kind of more how I thought they would be playing most of the year. Coming back and being better is amazing, but like the way that they did it to jump out and only lose, 2 games through the first couple months of the season, like it was kind of like, oh, like are they even beatable? But it's like they're 1000% beatable.
Mm-hmm.
And people just are overlooking that notion that they're not as good as people think. Getting Joe Nardella back was huge, but it's like you can't expect to go from the very bottom to the top and stay there. That's a tough thing to do. And that's what they've been trying to do is maintain at the top after teams like Toronto, San Diego, Buffalo, who are there every year, they're hitting their stride in the same part of the year that they would all the time. It just seemed like Albany hit their stride too early, and now they're just kind of coming back down to earth.
Yeah, I mean, I think like you said with Nards and then Doug Jamieson kind of coming back into form from the season he had last year to this year, it's more of the Doug Jamieson we know as a goalkeeper and as an anchor for that defense, like he's been in years past. And it's going to be interesting to see like just the shuffling after what happens in week 21. There's a lot that can still happen, which is super fun. If you're just a fan of the league and a fan of playoff scenarios and where teams can fall. Saskatchewan saved their season effectively by beating San Diego the way that they did. Their playoff chances, I think, more than doubled because of that win. They went from like a 22% chance to make the playoffs to more than 50%. Vancouver staying alive, going on this streak that they're on has been wild to watch. And, you want to talk about from top down, I think that's a credit to Kurt Malosky and some of the veterans on that team, like a Kevin Crowley, to kind of be anchors and let the younger guys on that team know, hey, this is what it takes to make the playoffs, and it's time to put up or shut up. And they've gone on this streak, and like we said, if the playoffs started today, they would be in. But I mean, there's gonna be a lot of shuffling from the 3 seed to the 7 seed, more than likely. I think the 8 seed's gonna end up being one of Vancouver, Saskatchewan, or New York, with the slim chance of it being Rochester. But one game separates your 3 seed from your 7 seed, which get your popcorn ready because this weekend's going to be all time.
I say, and that was another thing is I think the last couple of weeks have really showed the parity in the league. We had a lot of teams vying for draft picks that were beating teams vying for, spots in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. There were playoff teams that were toward the bottom of the playoffs beating teams that are toward the top of the playoffs, trying to edge up in seeding. So it's kind of going in and seeing that this league's looked very similar to the West in the NBA this year, where seeds, I think it was like seeds like 4 or 5 through 10 were only like 3 games apart. It's like, that's crazy. But knowing that Panther City could win a game this week and then somehow end up in like 4th or 5th place is bananas. But it's like that's what we want to see in the league. That's what draws people in, is that anybody can win on any given night. And it's happening right in front of us on a regular every week. And that was like the one thing I pulled out is like, I don't think I did very well in picks last week, but like I went with a lot of the favorites and a lot of the favorites didn't win. And I think that's what you want to see no matter the time of the season, whether it's beginning of season, end of season, the middle. You want to see upsets happening. We got a lot of those the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, we both didn't do too well. But I did win the flip game because I picked Buffalo, you picked Calgary. But we both had San Diego, we both had Colorado beating Vegas, we both had New York beating Vancouver, both had Albany winning against Panther City. So it was a tough week. But that's the fun part about like the tail end of seasons as well, is like you never know what you're gonna get from some of these teams, and teams are ready to play spoiler. Teams are ready to, find a different gear to get to where they want to go. And you want to talk about spoiler, like some teams helped their causes for the future, and some teams may have hurt themselves to a degree. Because not only do we have playoff spots clinched, not only do we have seeding kind of start to sort itself out with the top 2 seeds being fully locked in, Philly beating Colorado, knocked Colorado down a peg to where Dylan Ward suffered an injury. Hopefully Dylan's okay. And a bunch of the Colorado guys were ruled out for that game against Vegas that they had on Saturday following a Friday night game. And Vegas comes out on top and gets their first win in weeks, months even, where it looked like Vegas was kind of going to be locked into that number 1 spot for the top pick in the draft. Now, if the draft were to be today, it would be the Wings picking first, then Vegas, and then due to the Holding Catoni trade, Rochester has the 3rd pick. It's wild to follow along with that portion because it is so interconnected and so tight in terms of the bottom of the standings as well that, a team like the Wings, who we've talked about all season long, and obviously I've covered them since they came back, have so much talent across the board that by the end of this weekend, it could play out that one of the more talented rosters in the league is going to add the number 1 overall pick in the draft.
We've talked about this 1,000 times over. I don't know really what to say about it. Like,
it's also crazy because typically when you think, especially in the NLL over the past few years, just even look back to last year, like Dyson Williams, number 1 overall pick, offensive guy when he comes into the league next year for Albany. Typically, when you're looking at any type of draft, maybe the NFL is like the one exclusion, but typically at the top, you're picking a quarterback. NBA, you're picking, your top offensive type of player. You look at the Wings, they got the offense on lock. It's the defense that needs the improvement. So will the Wings even make that pick? Who's to say? Do they trade back to try to get more picks to solidify that defense? But typically when you're looking at a draft, you're going for offense to be your number 1 overall pick because that's what draws people in. You want the top offensive star added to your roster.
You know what else draws people in?
Winning.
So who cares what normally happens? Go get the best defender you can get with the number 1 overall pick, and maybe you win some games and more people fill your seats. But instead, we do stupid things like trade those picks back to go and get guys who aren't as good on the defensive end and then wonder why we still lose games. And trust me, Philly ain't the only team that's done this before. It doesn't make sense to me. Like, why follow trends when you can do what's going to be best for you so that you can do what you need to do to be successful?
I 100% agree with you. And I think the only tough part for us is we never know what prospects are eligible for the NLL draft because there's so many rules that have to follow. Like I just saw Teddy Jenner put out the next Curse brother is not eligible for this year's NLL draft because he's only played 3 years of college. So he can't declare until the 2025 draft. There's so many weird rules and stipulations with the NLL draft that like until
why is it not
somebody
just 4 years of time away?
I have no idea. There's
like 4 years post high school. Like
it's so many weird like subsections of rules and regulations for eligibility with the NLL draft. I don't even know where to begin to wrap my head around deciphering it all. We'll have to get Teddy on before the draft, obviously. But it is wild that, with our connection to the Wings and the relationship we have with them, come draft time, we could have the number 1 overall pick right in our laps to come on the show.
That is very true, which is
so everyone at home should be
wild.
rooting for the situation where the Wings end up with the number 1 pick. If you're a fan of the pod, you should be rooting for that. I think it's that simple.
I am rooting for both somehow. For you to like get the first pick, but not get the first pick.
Which we would need.
Because like the way I see it is you get the first pick, it's exciting. I'm going to be able to talk to the number 1 draft pick, and OTB is going to be on the moon.
I think
if you don't, I get to hear you complain about not getting it, which would be
no, because then we would still find a way to get it. We have connections throughout the league.
I wasn't talking about getting the pick on. I just meant hearing you talk about Philly not having the number 1 pick.
I would be disappointed, but I'm more so looking out for the overall well-being of the show and getting a number 1 overall prospect on the podcast with direct access, which for the most part we would have. The biggest thing is for that to happen, for the Wings to end up with the number 1 pick by the end of the weekend, the matchups that are important. Halifax has to beat Colorado. And I think that's it because of the tiebreaker between Colorado and Vegas. Because where things sit right now, like Vegas is ahead of Colorado due to head-to-head record. So I think that's the biggest thing. Everyone needs to root for Halifax this weekend. I mean, we've been a big Halifax Thunderbirds podcast for a long time. This is years in the making. So we just need the Thunderbirds to win this week. And we're golden. Because Buffalo plays Vegas at Vegas. So if Colorado ends up pulling an upset, we would also need Vegas to pull an upset and beat Buffalo. Which is the worst case scenario for the occurrences.
Yeah, looking tough for your boy.
Looking tough for the boys right there. So let's go Halifax. Get your purple. Shout out Rosie. Play Maxine. All that good stuff. Because I think that's how it inevitably works out. Is if Halifax beats Colorado on Saturday, the Wings will have the number 1 overall pick. So, gonna be a doozy of a time with that one. Anything else stand out to you from week 20 before we dive into the final week of the regular season, Deej?
No, it was just a sad weekend for me. That's all.
So we shift to week 21, where the schedule plays out like this. We've got 2 games on Friday night. Rochester at Redacted at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. And then Vancouver at San Diego at 10 o'clock on Friday. Then it's Colorado at Halifax, 6:30 start time there. And then we have Albany at New York in the final New York Riptide home game in their franchise's existence. And then Panther City at Calgary, with Panther City trying to keep their postseason hopes alive. And then Toronto at Saskatchewan, is Saskatchewan trying to keep their postseason hopes alive. Buffalo at Vegas. And then Philly at Rochester is your regular season finale at 3 p.m. on Sunday. What stands out to you the most in the regular season finale, Deej?
Pretty much the big games we talked. Las Vegas, Buffalo, Colorado, Halifax, Panther City and Calgary will still be an important game. But biggest game of the weekend is Albany, New York, because it not only is possibly a chance for New York to get into the playoffs, but also it will decide Albany's seeding in the playoffs as well. So there's a ton going on with that matchup and what it means for multiple teams, not only just, Albany and New York, but that result will also affect other teams and where they end up in seeding as well. So that's the one I'm looking at. 4:20, 7:30. We're liking the time, liking the day, liking the matchup. And that one should be an absolutely heater on a teeter. Albany on fire, just like the things I have. I'm running out of words to say, but no,
lettuce brain.
Facts. I'm extremely excited for this
salad
matchup.
head over here.
big salad head. No, I'm definitely excited for that matchup, and that's going to be the one to watch because it will have thousands of trickle down effects.
Yeah, I think Rochester at Redacted to kick things off is huge. Just in terms of, like you said, with seeding, because Redacted is at 10-7, and it'll determine Rochester's postseason fate. Because that game right there, if Rochester wins, they stay alive going into Sunday. If not, I believe they're eliminated. So a lot to take away from that one. Then you also have the Colorado-Halifax game for multiple reasons, with Halifax's seeding with the number 1 overall pick. That's a fun game to tune into for a multitude of reasons. Vancouver trying to stay in the postseason. They got to beat San Diego. That's going to be a lot of fun. Vintage West Coast rivalry right there. And then I agree with you. I think Albany, New York is the game of the week. And then Toronto and Saskatchewan. Does Toronto keep some guys out, rest them up for the postseason versus, try to play spoiler of Saskatchewan's overall season? Vegas and Buffalo. Buffalo's got to win that for seeding purposes. And Philly, Rochester, there's playoff implications depending on the first end of the bookends this week. If Rochester ends up beating Redacted, then their postseason hopes are still alive going into the final day of the regular season to a degree. They would need a lot of help from a lot of teams, but it's going to be get your popcorn ready, order some divine takeout, whatever your choice may be, because it's going to be all types of amazing energy going on this weekend. From Friday to Sunday, you've got meaningful NLL lacrosse action. But yeah, sign us up for Albany, New York, being that game of the week, 7:30 p.m. on Long Island. Riptide fans, show out for the squad one last time. And I think with that, Deej, we head on over to the pick pond for one final regular season edition of our Beer Money Picks of the Week. Feed some ducks. Brought to you by Kenwood Beer, the official beer partner of Underground Sports Philadelphia. It is a refreshing light beer, just 4.1% ABV, only 120 calories, just 8 grams of carbs. You can find Kenny's on the Kenny Finder at kenwoodbeer.com in the New Jersey, Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, and Maryland areas. You can also get it at your local liquor stores in those markets. And I saw they just posted that Kenny's were in some liquor stores in the Cherry Hill area, so it's getting ever so close to home base down here. You can also go to the Kenny storefront at kenwoodbeer.com, check out the pint glasses, the apparel that they have as well. It's all top of the line. It's kenwoodbeer.com. Must be 21 or older to do so. And of course, please drink responsibly. Deej, we start off the final week of the regular season down in Redacted as Rochester tries to keep their postseason hopes alive, taking on the Redacteds.
Oh, you already know. Winning this game just about locks in that I did a better job at picking teams this year than you did. So that makes me happy. My teams are doing well outside of Calgary. So yeah, I'm picking because why not?
DJ loves making more editing happen for me by saying that name. I'm going to go with Rochester just for the parity of the league. Simply because if they end up winning, they stay alive going into Saturday and then have to be glued to their televisions to see if they're going to make the postseason or not. So I'm going to take Rochester to keep their playoff hopes alive going into potentially their finale on Sunday against the Wings. Then we go to 10 o'clock, the nightcap on Friday. Vancouver at San Diego. San Diego already locked into the 2 seed. They can't go up. They can't go down. Vancouver trying to keep their postseason hopes alive. If they win, I'm not sure if they're in. I don't know all of the tiebreaker scenarios, but right now they'd be in. I think San Diego, I don't know. This is the tough part. We don't know if some of these teams, like Toronto and San Diego being the only two right now, if they're going to rest guys because they have their seating locked in. They know that they're in the playoffs. They know they're going to be hosting a playoff game. Do they rest guys up for the playoffs? Do they keep some guys out, let some practice player guys get some time? I'm still going to go with San Diego in a close game. I think winning means a lot to that organization. They want to go into the postseason on a strong note as they try to, win a championship and make sure that Brody Merrill adds an NLL title to his resume. So I'm going to go with the Seals to get a close victory over Vancouver at home.
I'm going to go Vancouver. I think San Diego will play guys to keep them fresh, but I don't think they're as tied into this game as Vancouver is. Vancouver is literally fighting for something. San Diego's all good. And I think that extra oomph to, be competing with Panther City and Saskatchewan and New York, you're going to need everything you can. I'm picking Vancouver because I want to see every tiebreaker be used possible.
Yeah, it wouldn't shock me if Vancouver ends up winning either. I'm just going based on the knowledge we have now, too, with my pick for everybody at home, knowing that right now San Diego is going to play their roster, but that could change. And if it does, wouldn't shock me if Vancouver ends up winning. Then we go to Saturday, 6:30 p.m., Halifax hosting Colorado. T-Birds up, brother. I'm going Halifax.
Big Hallie guy here. I don't know how many times I've picked against Halifax this year, but I don't think it's many. There were a handful, but for the most part, I've been a Halifax guy all season. Not going to change that now.
Yeah, and I mean, that would make for electric content for us, so let's go Halifax. We love you, Colorado, but let's go Halifax. Game of the week, the OTB game of the week, and I think it is the league game of the week. Albany at New York, final home game on Long Island for the Riptide. And I think based on that alone, I'm going to go with the vibes and take the Riptide to get a win.
I mean, you already know who I'm with. I'm a Riptide guy. I'm sad I can't be there this weekend for their final game in Nassau because that would just be amazing. But yeah, down with the Riptide and up with the Black Bears. I haven't decided if I'm moving over there quite yet, but this will be a bittersweet ending because I believe they're going to win this game.
Yeah, which would also shake up the postseason layout quite a bit. Then we go to 9 o'clock Eastern time, Panther City at your Roughnecks. Panther City trying to keep their playoff hopes alive. Your Roughnecks trying to play spoiler. How do you see that going down, Deej?
I'm going to be loyal. I'm going to pick Calgary. But I'm not only being loyal to Calgary, I'm being loyal to New York as well in this. And New York most likely needs Panther City to lose to sneak into that spot. So I'll go with Calgary to help the brothers out in New York.
Yeah, I'm going to go Calgary as well. I think last week was a emotional win for Panther City to be like, oh shit, we're still alive. And Calgary knows what it takes to get to the postseason, and they're going to want to play spoiler. So I'm going to go with Calgary at home on that teal turf. Then we go Toronto at Saskatchewan. It's no matter who's playing, it's tough to pick against Toronto. They've lost 3 times all year. I got to go with Toronto.
Yeah, I'm going to go Toronto here too. I think they're going to rest some guys and stuff, but I think they'll still be able to pull this one out. Saskatchewan's been a tough team to back this year.
Then we go to 10 o'clock Eastern time, Buffalo at Vegas, Tucker out lymphoma game in Vegas. So an emotional night for both squads, but an awesome cause as well. I'm going to go Buffalo. This game has a lot of implications for them seeding-wise. They could still end up with a home game, depending on some of the games that happen earlier in the week and earlier in the day, I should say. So I'm going to go with the Bandits to get a win. And I saw a stat from our good pal Adam Levy. Buffalo is 4-1 since acquiring good friend of the program, Paul Dawson. And they are 5-1 since acquiring Connor Farrell. Pretty good. Pretty good. I'm going to go with Buffalo.
Yeah, I got Buffalo here as well. The way their season has gone, for them to pull out a playoff spot at home or a playoff game at home would be like top notch for them, and something that would kind of give them a boost headed into the playoffs. So I think they're looking at it the same way. I think they come out on top.
Final game of the 2023-2024 regular season in the NLL happens in Rochester, which shout out to Craig Repchinski. Just called his 400th straight National Lacrosse League game last week. 400 in a row without missing any time. What an accomplishment, and both DJ and I, as play-by-play guys, can tip of the cap there because of what goes into that. Wings in Rochester, I don't know. I'm going to try to see here just for the discourse. I don't know if Rochester has their first round pick or not. Because if they do, this game doesn't really matter in terms of positioning for the draft, but it would be interesting to see if they have their pick or not. I don't know if they do, according to the one site that I use. So some implications here, draft-wise and playoff-wise, depending if Rochester wins earlier in the week. I'm going to go with the Wings, because why not?
Sure, the Wings. You literally could have just put a quarter in the air and whatever it landed on was good with me. Like, I have no words. And since we're a Philly pod, Philly it is.
Yeah, and since they confirmed they listened to the pod this week, that's the bump. Give us the Wings. So here it is, our final picks of the week for the regular season. DJ has redacted. I have Rochester. He's got Vancouver. I've got San Diego. We both have Halifax. We both have the Riptide. Both have the Roughnecks. Both have the Rock. Both have the Bandits. And we both have the Wings. And those are your NLL Week 21 picks of the week, powered by Kenwood Beer. We move on, Deej, to the PLL. The big news is that the PLL schedule has been released. We have matchups. We have bye weeks confirmed. And it's going to be one hell of a summer. The confirmed bye weeks, which comes from the great research work from our awesome intern, Chase, the PLL Pipeline. Go follow Chase at the PLL Pipeline on Twitter and Instagram. Trying to find here. Here we go. So, confirmed bye weeks. The Boston Cannons will not play in Denver. The California Redwoods will not play in Albany. The Carolina Chaos will not play in Boston. The Denver Outlaws will not play in Philadelphia. The Maryland Whipsnakes will not play in Salt Lake City. The New York Atlas will not play in Baltimore. The Philadelphia Water Dogs will not play in Charlotte. And the Utah Archers will not play in San Diego. Those are your confirmed bye weeks. So those are the bye weeks confirmed. I know Deej and I were talking off pod with Chase about the bye weeks and everything. We kind of knew it was a inevitability that the bye weeks were going to happen based on no new team being added and the doubleheader aspect of the homecoming twist to this season. My only issue with the bye weeks, and I think Whipsnakes fans should be disappointed. They're not playing in Salt Lake City, where lifetime in franchise history, the Maryland Whipsnakes are undefeated in Salt Lake City. Auto win removed from the Whipsnakes schedule.
Well, they probably
sorry about your luck.
They have an auto loss on the schedule still, though, because they got to play the Redwoods. They're not good the game after they play the Redwoods. So just throwing that out there.
The schedules in terms of homecoming matchups are electric. I love the way that the league is doing it. I wouldn't say it's forcing, but it is catering to the geographical rivalries in the major four sports, which I love. And it all gets going for us in a big way with Philly. You get a rematch of Champ Series. The Cannons will be an opponent for the Water Dogs. And then your other opponent for Philadelphia is a rivalry that you and I have talked about on this show that we feel like doesn't get the credence it deserves, and it is the Maryland Whipsnakes. So Philly homecoming weekend is going to be unbelievable if you're a Water Dogs fan in terms of rivalries, which I'd say give it about a month. We'll be giving out details to how you can enter to sit in the OTB seats in the K9 crew section for Philly homecoming week. So stay tuned for those. But here are the matchups, Deej. I know you've been busy, so I don't know if you've seen all of the matchups fully laid out. But we do get a championship game rematch, week 1 in Albany. Archers, Water Dogs, then Cannons playing Atlas, the Paul Rabel Bowl. Chaos against the Outlaws, and then Whipsnakes Atlas in the finale there for the New York Atlas homecoming weekend. I know you're disappointed that the Redwoods are not playing in Albany. And it is kind of strange to have a team on a bye week 1 when training camp is in Albany. But what are your thoughts on that? Because I know that was the most pressing portion of the bye weeks for you, is that week 1 you won't get to see your Redwoods.
Yeah. The biggest thing is, like, it just doesn't make sense to not start the year with everyone. Like, it's opening weekend. Like, look across every sport, opening weekend, everybody plays. That's just what you do. No one has a bye week to start the season. Like, you're robbing us. That's kind of just how I feel about it. And that's kind of just how I feel about it in general. Like, I understand the money piece, but, like, if you're not going to add a team, I would have loved to have seen us go back to 3-day weekends so that everybody's playing. But I don't know. I don't know how it would have been done, but I just would have loved to have seen it be in a way where there are no bye weeks due to, I understand we went market-wise, but that doesn't mean that people are going to want to see that team in that market right now. So now there's still that piece where fans aren't able to see their favorite team. Like, there's going to be kids in Albany that are Redwoods fans, and they're not going to be able to see their favorite team play because of this bye week scenario. It's tough luck. I get, that's just how things work, but it just sucks. That's the piece I don't like about it is kids miss out. I'll be okay. I'm going to go see the Redwoods play throughout this summer. I will be fine. But there's kids in some of these markets, and it's not just Redwoods, like,
yeah,
every team
weekend
has a bye week. So there's going to be fans at every weekend, or there's going to be fans who choose not to buy tickets because their favorite team isn't going to be there. So it's a loss in money and it's a loss in opportunity for people, which just sucks all around. But it is what it is.
And I think, to just play devil's advocate in the thought process, is I think they're banking on a lot of the city initiative, like the home market initiative and everything, for people to feel that sense of ownership of a team and gravitate to your home market team in a lot of instances, which will be the case for some people. You'll have the people who may have been Chrome fans and now there's a team in their market. They're going to gravitate to that team now, potentially. It's a weird scenario, but just thinking on like the marketing aspect of it, I think that is a major factor into some of this. But I agree, for a lot of kids that maybe Redwoods fans in New York, it sucks that you're not going to see your favorite team. We moved to Charlotte. You may be a Water Dogs fan. You're not going to see the Water Dogs in Charlotte this year. This is your Charlotte matchups, which Charlotte is all night games, which is very exciting for everyone going down to Charlotte. It kicks off Redwoods against Chaos, one of the best rivalries in the league. The out of the woods matchup this season. Then you have Archers against the Outlaws, Whipsnakes against the Cannons, and then Atlas against Chaos for your two Chaos homecoming weekend matchups. It'll be Redwoods and Atlas for your Carolina Chaos. And then, like we mentioned, part of the Philadelphia weekend, which is very interesting. The second game is a to-be-determined time slot. Cannons Water Dogs gets everything going on the 15th of June. Then it is Archers Chaos, one of the better matchups and rivalries in the league. That time is to be determined. Then it's Redwoods Atlas, and then Whipsnakes Water Dogs to round out Philadelphia's homecoming weekend. And then your first neutral site matchup. So everybody's on a bye after Philadelphia as well, for what it's worth. There's a break in between the schedule there. So nobody's playing that week following Philly. Then we move to Minnesota, first neutral site where everyone will play. It'll be Atlas Whipsnakes, Cannons Archers, Redwoods Outlaws, Water Dogs Chaos. Those are all night games as well in Minnesota, which I think is the first time we've had night games since 2022, maybe even 2021 in Minnesota, which will be really cool. And then 4th of July weekend is in Boston. Your Cannons homecoming weekend matchups are feeding into that scumbag Bostonry of California and Philadelphia, ever so eloquently narrated by our good pal Jeff Trainer. Redwoods Cannons kicks things off, and then it's Outlaws Atlas, Archers Whipsnakes, and then Water Dogs and Cannons. The first day of those games are night games as well, and then a 4:30 start time for the second day and a 7 o'clock night game to round things out in Boston. Then All-Star weekend, or All-Star game, is in Kentucky, in Louisville. And then we go to the second half of the season. Next neutral site game, Fairfield, Connecticut, one of our faves. It'll be Outlaws Water Dogs, Chaos Whipsnakes, Atlas Cannons, and then Archers Redwoods. That one is a to-be-determined time slot, but the first day of Fairfield, Deej, night games in Fairfield. That'll be a lot of fun that weekend there. And then we go to San Diego for Redwoods homecoming weekend. Perfect matchup there. Chaos Redwoods gets us started. It'll be Outlaws and Cannons, Water Dogs and Atlas, and then Whipsnakes Redwoods to round out Redwoods homecoming weekend. And then we have Whipsnakes homecoming weekend, where it will be Water Dogs Whips, Outlaws Redwoods, Chaos Archers, and then Cannons and Whip Snakes. Then we go to Denver for Outlaws homecoming weekend. It'll be Whip Snakes and Outlaws, Water Dogs and Redwoods, Atlas Archers, and Chaos Outlaws. Which, Deej, to our chagrin and the help of our sleep schedule to a degree, the Atlas Archers game in Denver is a 2:30 Eastern time start. We got afternoon West Coast.
Okay. I'm like,
oh no. I mean, we'll still be exhausted because Water Dogs Redwoods is 10:30 Eastern time.
I was about to say, bro, I ain't gonna make that.
No, it's 2:30 p.m. Eastern time there, so fun there. And then we round out the regular season, Salt Lake City, for Archers homecoming weekend. It's Redwoods Archers, Cannons Chaos, Atlas Water Dogs, and Outlaws and Archers to round out the regular season. Now, obviously, the other portion of this, because we do have conferences this year for the first time in the PLL, you're going to play your conference teams twice throughout the season. So that's why you see some double up matchups there. Overall, I think the schedule's a lot of fun. There's a lot of entertaining matchups in markets where I think you and I both will agree they belong. But yeah, a lot of interesting weekends there, which we'll have our full slate of weekends that we'll be attending in the very near future. Obviously, you guys know we'll be in Baltimore. You know we'll be in Albany. And you know we'll be in Philly. We'll have a full slate, though. I will be in Fairfield. Deej is still working out the coaching schedule and figuring that out. But Fairfield, I will be there for sure. And then Boston for me is like 35-65. Yes, no. Just because playoffs are in Boston as well. But we'll see. But
yeah, as soon as I know, all the people out there will know. I am 95% sure I will be at Albany. I've not laid that across my boss, but I don't think he will have any objections to me working remotely that week like I did last year.
Since you'll be here the week before for
right. I don't think
college.
he'll have any problems with me working remotely that week. So I should be both at college finals and Albany. I will for sure be at Baltimore. That one is already circled and checked off on my calendar. But other than that, a lot of things are up in the air. So once I hit my coaching schedule for the summer, I'll be able to be more defined on where exactly I'll be.
And then obviously you'll already know we do the full playoff run. So we'll be at the postseason every step of the way. But yeah, I'm excited, to see the schedule in front of us now. And I know Mike and Paul talked about it on one-on-ones when it released on Wednesday, and we're recording this on Thursday. But by the time you guys are listening to this, it'll be 45 days until opening weekend, which is crazy to conceptualize and think about that we are that close. But seeing the schedule like in front of your face now is like, it makes it feel that much more real.
Oh yeah, it's literally right there, and I'm so excited. This is going to be another blockbuster season, and I'm just excited to kind of get to a couple of these homecoming weekends and see what they're going to be like. Like, are they going to be trying to brand it around that team, or is it still going to be kind of a PLL centric event? Like, there's just a lot of questions about how the homecoming stuff is going to work, and I'm really excited to see that.
I may or may not know some things that I can't disclose yet.
Then
I forget if I've told you.
You have not.
But let's just say, if you're a fan of a team that's in a home market, be prepared to experience a PLL weekend like you never have before.
Okay.
Very excited for
the way that the homecoming
weekends are going to be.
Those are some interesting words.
So with that, the schedule release, let us know the weekend you're going to be at in the YouTube comment section. Tweet it at us. Let us know who we're going to be seeing on the tour this year. And with that, we are going to move to our one-on-ones reaction. So let's react to one-on-ones. Deej, Mike, and Paul do a podcast. Cue the It's Always Sunny music. Very entertaining listen. I could listen to those two talk with each other truly about almost anything. Very entertaining. And they answered 3 questions like they're going to do every single week. And it ranged in, different spectrums of the game, of the league, and just the way that people are consuming pro lacrosse right now. So the first question was about like the shot clock and the 32-second shot clock, which I found interesting. That the one big takeaway I had was, according to Paul, the players and coaches that are in the league right now have a big hand in whether or not they agree with rules that are coming across. And they said that, the way that the shot clock in the game overall has evolved from college to MLL to PLL has just made the game a better product, to go from no shot clock back in the day to where, the strategy was just hold the ball and the other team can't score. That had to get rectified, change the strategy of the game. And then the way that the shot clock was changed from the MLL to the PLL, where you eliminated part of the field. So the field was shorter. You had to make the shot clock shorter. It made sense to cut it from 60 to 52. And then, to just hear from Mike and Paul that there is collaboration from players and coaches on these rules and making sure that, they understand and are in favor of them, I think is huge, because at the end of the day, those are the players that are trying to execute with those rules in place. And if they're not playing at their best, then you got to, take a look at something. But it was a very interesting conversation about the shot clock in general.
I don't think there's anything really that needs to be changed about the shot clock. I think the change they made was great. 52 is great. 32 off the first face is fine with me, and I like 32 off the reset. I think it speeds the game up to where there's still enough time to have the best players out on the floor and to make your sub or out on the field, make your subs, and then still get a good possession off while not stalling in any way to where you're just sitting and waiting for your subs to come on the field. Those are the kind of things that need to be taken, like not necessarily taken out of the game, because it is important to sub and kind of take your time and do those things, but it has to be done in a way that still draws people in. I think a lot of people are lost in that. And I even think the college games should go down to 60 and 40. I think you should have 60
we've talked
off
about
the
that
initial clock, 40, 20 to clear, so you still got to clear it by 40, and then your resets go to 40. I think that's plenty of time. And 52 and 32 is plenty of time as well.
Yeah, because we've talked about it a ton, and I've voiced it a bunch, where like your ultimate goal for a lot of these programs, especially at the D1 level, is you want to see these guys continue their careers. And if they have plans to go pro, then you want them to be as prepared for the pro game as possible. And not every player is going to go pro. That's a given. It's a very select few that get the opportunity to do that. But I think the more on par and the more linear we get with college to the pro game, the more entertainment value there is for the people watching at home, and the more fans you're going to draw in, the better your TV ratings will be at the college level. That means more people are watching your sport and are going to follow along to the pro level across the board. You and I have talked about that when it comes to basketball, when it comes to certain things with college football. Like, the more linear we get across the board with the college game reflecting the pro game, the better off collegiate athletics are going to be from an entertainment value and from a preparedness level for those players that end up going pro at the end of the day.
I really thoroughly enjoy this idea of one-on-ones, and what it's bringing to the game in terms of us being able to bridge that gap. I think there's a little bit of a gap between fans and players that you don't see in other sports, because they're so forward talking with the media, or like, there's things being leaked. A lot of one-on-ones brings, like, for example, they've had these conversations about shot clock and draft and team sizes for years with coaches and players. We as fans just aren't able to know that because that information isn't put out. One-on-ones is a great opportunity for people to get in and get the answers they're really looking for. Like, a lot of people are upset about the face-offs. A lot of people are upset about the shot clock. But when you're able to ask the person who made the decision, your mind changes on some of those things. And that's what I'm most excited about with one-on-ones. Like, not even just for fans outside of us. Like, we have a small glimpse of that, like when we're out at weekends and stuff, being able to interact with players, coaches, front office. But even we'll have some questions and kind of some debates that we don't have answers to. So being able to ask those things in one-on-ones is going to be tremendous.
Yeah.
And I think it may even change the way players look at certain things, the way that they respond in certain press conferences and things like that as well. I think it overall has an impact of drawing the game closer for everyone. And there's
it gives a lot of more clarity for fans too.
Yeah.
We likened it last week when this got announced as a project that Mike and Paul were going to be doing. We likened this to being like if Roger Goodell started a podcast that you could call a phone number to and ask Roger Goodell questions. If, Rob Manfred was available to do something like this and questioning, why do we have a pitch clock? Why are we making the bases bigger in baseball? Why can we no longer block the plate? Like, it's the same thing being able to ask Mike and Paul. And I think the transparency that they both give in this episode, in the pilot episode of this, is so valuable. And if you haven't listened to this podcast yet, it's also, I think, on the PLL official YouTube channel to watch. Highly recommend. We're going to be talking about everything that they bring up every single week. So the next one, oddly enough, Deej, we got the answer to about 2 months ago, because when I was at Champ Series and you were on for the interview with Mike at Champ Series, you asked him this, obviously being from the Midwest yourself. Why was no team considered for the Midwest was kind of the question that was asked in the voicemail that was left. Specifically, Chicago was talked about from that caller. And Mike brought it up. He's like, I'm going to Chicago tomorrow. I guess at the time of this recording, he's probably in Chicago right now to meet with Whirlpool, who's one of the new partners that will be working closely with the Whip Snakes. And we got this answer about 2 months ago on our show on OTB Radio, which you can watch that interview on this channel, on the Outside the Box podcast YouTube channel as well. If you want to just watch the interview itself, it's available there. Basically said, they went to Chicago year one, and it's the Chicago Fire is the MLS team.
Yeah.
They played at their stadium, and it's far out, in terms of it being considered Chicago, and MLS fans have an issue with the location of their stadium as well. And sure, it rained the weekend that they were there and everything, but overall, it's finding a reasonable venue in Chicago for a team to be there. And Mike brought up, the Chicago Machine existed in the MLL, so there has been pro lacrosse in Chicago before. They've worked directly with a lot of their partners. They mentioned, I think, specifically Gatorade to try to find venues. They brought up Northwestern again, which I'm pretty sure Mike brought up when he was on with us as well. It's a matter of finding the proper venue that is most accommodating to the masses. And, it's a reflection. And Paul also brought up just the overall thing. I think this is the first time we've heard on the record them say that, like, more teams are coming. It's just a matter of when and the execution of them. But I think it was the first time I personally remember it being on the record of Paul or Mike saying, like, they plan on expanding again. It's just a matter of doing it the right way. And Chicago is a market that they've looked at. They said they want to have a team in the Midwest. They want to have a team in the Pacific Northwest. They love Texas, and that's what brought up the conversation about Kyle Hartzell and Texas's MCLA program, which, shout out to them, went undefeated this year. They brought up multiple markets that I think, will be in the PLL's future. And it's just a matter of the right opportunity, the venue, the actual ticket sales themselves, and the fan turnout, which everyone knows is there in the Midwest. It's just finding the right market, and it'll eventually come. And you brought this up, when the home cities were announced when we did our live. It will eventually be there. It's just a matter of the proper execution coming, the right people coming along to help with that, initiative, and finding the proper stadium in the Midwest that will accommodate to the masses in that market.
Yeah. As far as the Midwest, it's kind of just a wait and see game. It's gonna happen eventually, and it just pains us because it feels like we get overlooked with a lot of things here, especially when it comes to the cross world and that nature. But there's literally nothing we can do about it other than show up when they're here. And as far as the Midwest, we're arguably the most like spread out region. Like the Midwest is like 20 states. Like, of course, it's going to be harder for them to put one here because they have to decide which state is actually going to be most advantageous for people to travel to and is going to have the most amount of people there. Like, the Midwest is such a hard place to put a team. And I think that's why the MLL teams and the NLL teams we've seen in those spaces didn't do well either. So I think the PLL is taking a lot of time to go about it the correct way and market it in a way that will have it be advantageous for not only them, but for fans as well.
Because I think with the Midwest too, like, we both can almost confidently say Minnesota one day is going to have a team. They love going to Minnesota. The relationship they have with the Minnesota Vikings and playing at their practice facility is one of the best that they have. But I also think when it comes to the Midwest, they want to be able to put multiple teams there for that reason you said. It's so spread out. Let's have a team in Minnesota, but also have a team closer to the Ohios, the Michigans, something like that. And who knows, maybe one of those teams ends up being in like Louisville with the All-Star game continuing to go there. This is the first time that they've done a repeat venue for an All-Star game in league history. Maybe that's also an opportunity for them to see, okay, Louisville's showing out. This is a market we can really take advantage of. Let's put a team in Kentucky. So I think it's a matter of not only finding the right opportunity, but finding the right opportunity for two teams minimum to end up being in the Midwest overall with the league. And, Pacific Northwest, you're not being overlooked. They fully want to have a team in Seattle. They fully want to have a team in that Washington area. They want to have a team in Texas. They want to have teams all over. It's just doing it the right way, like they have so far with these 8 home markets right now, and then building upon that. And I think this year will give them a lot of data on how home market execution goes and what we will see in the future from that, which I'm excited about. And it just means the league will continue to grow. We'll see more guys get opportunities because there will be more rosters, and it'll make the league that much more entertaining. It'll have more parity. It'll be done the right way, just like Mike and Paul and the rest of the PLL front office has done over the last 5 years.
Yeah, I just think when it comes, it'll be done right, and we'll all be extremely happy. We're all just rightfully upset that we feel slighted. Everybody just feels slighted in the Midwest that, like, we showed up to 2 Columbus dates, when they had them, and, we did the voting and everything, and it feels like our efforts weren't enough. But that's just not realistically the answer.
And kind of, if you look at Columbus, that was them trying to find the proper venue. They did an MLS stadium, did a smaller collegiate stadium. Let's try to find that sweet spot that's in the middle somewhere when it comes to Ohio being on their radar. But Mike does a very awesome and like insightful dive into this with us personally. So if you want to hear that, we'll link the interview in the description if you missed it from Champ Series a couple of months ago when we brought this up to him, and he really gave us an awesome detailed answer that he reiterated a lot of those points on one-on-ones. And then the final question that was brought up was how the league is incorporating women's lacrosse. Very awesome, question to bring up, especially with how the rise of women's sports being in the limelight of the sports world, especially with collegiate women's basketball. And now I think even louder the cries for support for the WNBA, which is awesome. I think the women's game is on the up and up, and we saw, and I feel so thankful to have seen it firsthand with the All-Star game at Champ Series. The way that they are implementing the women's game for lacrosse is only getting started. They had the All-Star teams go to Japan in 2019, and this year you have the Unleashed brand that's under the Athletes Unlimited banner going on. You have women's clinics going on with the women's pros, and I think the more, like Paul brought up, you're looking for those superstars to really light, not to quote the Sacramento Kings here, but light the beam for any sport in particular. You're looking for those people to bring attention to your game. And I think more than ever, you had it in the past with the women's game, but I think now more than ever, there's even more talent across the board, with the Charlotte Norths, especially over the past couple of years. You had the Dana Dobies, you had these trailblazers who have created an opportunity for so many that it's only getting started. And I think the women's game is only going to continue to grow. It's only going to evolve more. And it's going to be fascinating to see how the PLL and the women's game continue to go on this upward trajectory together.
Yeah, I've talked a lot about the women's game, and seeing the things that they can do with the current landscape of their sport is fantastic. Like women like Charlotte North, Kylie O'Miller, Dana Dobie, just it goes on and on. You know
Liz
what I'm saying?
Colson, shout out.
It's them not having a pocket in the limit of contact in their sport, and they're still able to do the amazing things we see in the guys' sport, or even better things, is astronomical to me. But I just Sixes is a great way to speed their game up and make it exciting for people who have no clue what's going on. And we've seen the conversations of trying to emulate the men's sport and make it more like the men's sport and add contact and go 10v10 and actually have somebody come off for a penalty and it be releasable or non-releasable, and all those kinds of things, having flags rather than cards. I would love to see the game as it is move forward. I think the slight separation is cool. But I do think until they're able to be until there's a little more contact, I think there will be a stall always around it. But attaching the Unleashed to the PLL and TLN and that moniker, or even just finding ways to use the PLL to put them on a pedestal is kind of the way to go. So the Unleashed game at Champ Series, the Unleashed game against the pro women in Japan, all of that is what we need to see more of. And I think the PLL's done an amazing job.
Yeah, I think the one quote too that stood out to me at Champ Series when we had the press conferences with the women's all-star teams, the thing that stood out to me was all of them said this entire week we have been treated and have felt like professional athletes. And I think that's the start. When you have that moment of clarity of this is what a professional athlete should be treated like, that's when your trajectory is starting to go, and it's starting to, the outlook of what you want for your sport is beginning to turn the tide a bit, and I think it's only going to go up from here. We have plans to bring on a lot of women's pros in the near future, which is very exciting. I can't wait to work all of that out. But yeah, I mean, some awesome questions on one-on-ones. They also asked each other, which I thought was very funny. It was a callback to Suiting Up, Paul's podcast he did before this. What was on their home screens?
I didn't see.
And Paul basically like has his entire life ingrained into his phone home screen, and Mike had like the traditional things that he needs, along with socials and stuff. And Paul said he had to box in like Twitter and Instagram so he wasn't constantly clicking on it because he felt hungover from doing it.
Interesting use of words for that. But I kind of agree. I feel like I'm always clicking on the same apps all the time.
And then they also talked about with their like phone backgrounds, where Mike has his wife and his son, and then Paul said that, and he said when they first started the PLL, it was either the PLL logo or like one of the sold out venues like Albany or Homewood. And then when life changes, things get more important. So that's what led Mike to say it's his wife and his son. And then Paul said the same thing, and his phone background is his girlfriend, who is going to be Sue Storm in the Fantastic Four in the MCU, which is fucking crazy. And Mike like took a funny jab and was like, yeah, it's crazy how you two kind of like met in the first place. Which we need that story. I need to know how those two met.
I'm sure we'll get it.
We'll call into one-on-ones and ask.
Facts.
But yeah, I mean, we're gonna react to the one-on-ones questions every single week. It is an important tool for us to utilize covering the PLL. Just like using the PLL app is, Deej, and you guys been talking about it. As far as we know, it still works. So download the PLL app in the App Store, Google Play Store. If you don't have a profile already, make a profile. But if you do, go to the redeem code section, type in OTBPOD in the redeem code section. You get 500 XP on your account in the PLL app. We use the app every single day for a multitude of reasons. You should be doing the same. Keep up with your favorite team, your favorite players, news around the league, and you get a whole bunch of rewards. It's a gamified app for a sports league, which is like the first of its kind. Download the PLL app, go to the redeem code section, use code OTBPOD for 500 XP in the PLL app. Last bit of PLL news here. The Pro Lacrosse Hall of Fame class of 2024 was announced today as we record this, Deej. 4 members going into the Hall of Fame. And I think that Outlaws homecoming weekend is going to be that much more electric because of it, because 3 of the 4 played for the Outlaws. But you have Brendan Mundorf, Lee Zink, Kyle Sweeney, and Josh Sims, your 2024 Pro Lacrosse Hall of Fame class.
I wish I had more to say, but the only name on this list that I've heard of is Kyle Sweeney. No disrespect to anybody else. Obviously, there's a reason why they're on this list. I think Mundorf has come up before, but I don't know a ton about him. I have seen plenty of film on Sweeney. I've pointed him out to some of my players, and we've talked about some of the things he's done and how he used to set up his checks and then take advantage of being a pole that could handle. So not surprised at all to see Sweeney make this list. But like you said, that to have 3 of the 4 playing on one team makes that weekend insane. I think that weekend is just going to be great in general. Denver Outlaws were always an MLL team that pulled in, and people are going to be excited to have that moniker back and that style and be able to wear their old gear. And then to be, sending in 3 out of their 4 guys, this year is it's great.
I have the accolades for all the players.
I was going to say, yeah, I was just going to run through that for Sweeney, like 7-time All-Star, 4-time MLL champ, 4-time pro. Now only 183 games with 530 ground balls, 72 points. And I mean, he's played for Everybody. Everybody.
He collected teams like Infinity Stones.
Facts, but that's the kind of stuff you want to see is guys really balling out.
Yeah, Brennan Mundorf going in, played for the Denver Outlaws from 2006 to 2013, and then he played for the Chesapeake Bayhawks from 2014 to 2016. 7-time All-Star, 4-time All-Pro, 2012 MLL MVP, 453 points in his career, which is good for 8th all-time, 316 total goals, which is good for 4th all-time, 316 one-point goals, which is 2nd all-time, and 136 assists, which is 16th all-time for Brennan Mundorf. I mean, he's unbelievable. You watch some of his highlights that the league has put out, and the quote that they used is Brennan Mundorf, who can't miss. When you get that moniker about you, like, that's how you know you're a stone cold stinger for the back of the net. Lee Zink, another member of this class, played for the Bayhawks from 04 to 05, and then the Outlaws from 2006 to 2014. An 8-time All-Star, a 5-time All-Pro, 2-time MLL champion, and a 2-time Defensive Player of the Year. Played in 148 games, which is 13th all-time, and had 268 career ground balls. A quote from the highlight that the league put out: the thing I love about Lee's game, it wasn't flash, but it was extremely effective. And Deej, I think you as a defenseman can appreciate that to the fullest extent. Kyle Sweeney, like you mentioned, 7-time All-Star, 4-time MLL champion, 4-time All-Pro in 183 games played, which is 2nd all-time, 529 ground balls, which is 9th all-time, recorded 72 points, played for the Philadelphia Barrage from 03 to 08, played for the Boston Cannons from 09 to 14, the Bayhawks from 15 to 16, and then the Lizards from 16 to 17. Quoted as one of the best offensive defenders in MLL history. And then Josh Sims, who played for, get ready for this one, the Bayhawks from 01 to 05, the Outlaws from 06 to 09, the Chicago Machine in 2010. He played for the Nationals in 2010, and he played for the Outlaws in 2012. 4-time All-Star, 2-time MLL champion, MLL 10th anniversary team, 246 career points, 147 one-point goals, 15 two-point goals, which is 20th all-time, and a nice 69 assists. So there are your 2024 Pro Lacrosse Hall of Famers going into the Hall this year, which I'm pretty sure, I don't know if they're still doing it the same, being at Homewood, which it's been the past couple of years. So we'll see when they get fully. I don't know if it's in the press release, actually. Let's see. Because I know last year it was at Homewood, but then the year before it was on Long Island. So we'll see when. I mean, would kind of make sense that it would be Denver, being that 3 of the 4 guys played for the Outlaws, but
Never know.
You never know. Before we get into the college recap with Portal Jones, a word from our pals at Tomahawk Shades, the best small batch eyewear in the game, from sunglasses to blue light glasses to prescription lenses. They've got you covered with a quality product that is a fraction of the price of the big eyewear companies. They've been rocking with us for years. They got some stuff in the works that we're very excited about. You guys go to tomahawkshades.com or download the Tomahawk Shades app in the App Store, Google Play Store. And when you go to checkout, when your cart's filled to the brim, use code USP for 25% off your order at tomahawkshades.com or in the Tomahawk Shades app. The best small batch eyewear in the game. That's code USP from our friends at Tomahawk Shades at tomahawkshades.com or in the Tomahawk Shades app. And I am correct. The Hall of Fame induction ceremony will be in Baltimore, Maryland again this year.
Let's do this thing. We're gonna skip D2, D3. The important parts are Salisbury and Limestone are both the last 2 undefeated teams in all of NCAA lacrosse. D3, obviously Salisbury, D2 for Limestone. Adrian split the week 17-8 over Kalamazoo, which was just yesterday, and they lost 14-4 over the weekend to Hope. So they're looking to battle for a conference playoff spot. Only top 4 make it out of 6 or out of 7. So a couple more wins we got to grab, but we're looking to be able to do that. So let's jump right into it. D1 Utah over Mercer 20-9, Merrimack 14-9 over UMass Lowell. That got us started for the weekend Friday night. Army West Point over Navy in the Army Navy game 13-8. Yale winning again 20-13. Brandau having double-digit points again is getting out of hand. Jacksonville big over Lindenwood 20-5. Maryland outstretches Rutgers just barely 11-6. Penn over Harvard 15-12 in what turned out to be a great game. Couldn't believe North Carolina only lost by 1 to Syracuse. Thought that game would be a little bit more of a blowout. Penn State outlast Michigan 14-8. Tried to come back late game. Quinnipiac continues to roll 13-12. I think they've only lost 1, maybe 2 so far this year. Nova over St. John's 14-9. Air Force 14-3 over Mercy. Albany over NJIT, who has really started to slide this year. St. Joe's over Hobart. Denver outlast Georgetown 10-8 in what ended up being a blockbuster game out in the Big East. Getting into Sunday, Duke over Virginia again, which has been 20 times in the last 22 or something crazy like that. Notre Dame barely outlast Cornell 18-17 in what was probably the best game of the weekend. My God, what a game. And then Johns Hopkins over Ohio State in OT 11-10. Another game that I thought was a tad too close. Yale wins another one on Tuesday, and Air Force wins another one yesterday 20-5 over Mercer. Headed into the weekend. Good stuff. We're getting tons of Friday lacrosse. So Army's back in action against Bucknell, UAlbany, and Yale. Battle off Loyola Maryland Navy, and then Penn State Rutgers. Big matchups for Friday. Saturday, Harvard and Cornell, North Carolina Notre Dame, Virginia Syracuse, Air Force Jacksonville, Denver and Providence might be a decent one. Villanova and Marquette should be good. Michigan, Ohio State, as we all know, go blue because we hate them dudes down there. Love you, coach. But Maryland and Johns Hopkins as well. That'll wrap up Saturday. Sunday, Albany and Merrimack are be the only ones in action. Bryant and Brown on Tuesday. Wrapping up the week, kind of a couple bye weeks out there, and kind of just a little sly action for the people to enjoy the weekend. There's some good games, but also kind of a Taylor back weekend as we get ready to get into conference playoffs very soon.
I do have a narrowed down list for you, Deej. It's been narrowed down to 25. Your Tewaaraton candidates, or nominees, I should say, for both men's and women's. Do you want the list?
No, let's wait on it.
Well, there is one that I think
25 is so large.
There's one that I think you'll love, but there's also one very notable snub that has been hot in the streets lately that I just wanted to get your take on.
Are you talking about Griffin Schutz?
No.
Oh, okay.
But your boy Josh Sawat is on the list.
Expected.
But how do you feel about Peyton Cormier not being on the list? It's been a highly discussed topic in the streets.
I get why people are like that, but Colin Schellenberger, like, they're only going to give so many guys the nod. You know what I'm saying? Like, and when you look over at Duke, they got to put Brennan on there. They got to put Zawada on there. They got to put Joey Spallina on there. Got to put CJ Kurse. Got to put both the Cavs. Got to put Shelley. Got to put Brandau. you start running out of lists. Do I think he deserves it? Absolutely. He has an amazing season, but he's not a guy that makes waves, and I see where people go with like the Heisman thing with like, because like I said the same thing about like why Blake Corum wasn't on it, but like he didn't do it in an exciting way. And that's kind of what we're seeing with Cormier is he's scoring goals, but like he's not creating them. People are doing all the movement for him. He's catching and shooting, which there's nothing wrong with that. But people want excitement. The votership comes from how you do it, not what you do. I don't really agree with that notion, but that's the one that's out there.
Yeah, for the people at home, it comes from TLN. But this is the official 25 nominees that have been narrowed down to Matt Brando, Kenny Brower from Duke, Graham Bundy Jr. from Georgetown, Emmett Carroll, the goalie from Penn, Will Coletti, the faceoff specialist from Army, Liam Entenmann. I'm going to butcher his last name, but it's the junior goalie from Penn State.
Oh, Frassion.
Yes. Chase Earlin, Cole Kastner from Virginia, Pat Cav, Sam King from Harvard, CJ Kirst, Shane Knobloch, Coulter Mackesy from Princeton, TJ Malone, Will Mark, Brennan O'Neill, Pacino Stan 88. Shout out Brian. Shelley, Joey Spallina, Alex Stathakis, the faceoff specialist from Denver, Luke Wireman from Maryland, Dalton Young, Ajax Zapatello, and Josh Sawada.
A lot of D guys on there, which I'm happy with. I know most of them won't make the finalists, but that's solid. Solid list.
So those are your narrowed down 25 men's nominees for award season, which will be here before we know it. That's all we got for you guys on this episode. Make sure you're following us on the socials at OTB LaxPod, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Threads, Facebook.com/OTB LaxPod. Follow Deej on Twitter at SCS_NextGreat. Follow me at KBIZZL311. Subscribe to the podcast feed on Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts in audio form. Leave a 5-star rating and review. It goes a long way for helping this show continue to grow. Lets us do more dope stuff with and for you guys. And shout out to the supporter groups for posting all the reels on Instagram and Facebook and Twitter and everything. You guys are real ones. We also got some follow backs on the gram from a lot of the supporter groups recently too. So shout out to those awesome groups that have followed us. And if you haven't yet, come through. Tell your social admins, come through. Subscribe to the Underground Sports Philadelphia YouTube channel, youtube.com/@UndergroundSportsPhiladelphia. Subscribe to the OTB YouTube channel, youtube.com/@OTBLaxPod. Get your merch at phiapparel.co and use code Underground for 10% off your order. And this has been episode number 319 of the award-nominated, honorably mentioned, number 9 NCAA ranked, and of course viewable on YouTube, Outside the Box Podcast, the official lacrosse podcast on the Underground Sports Philadelphia Podcast Network. For Deej, I'm KB. Enjoy the finale of NLL lacrosse this weekend. Let's go Thunderbirds. And we got some fun stuff in the works, so stay tuned for it. But we'll catch you guys next week. Till then, we're getting the heck up out of here. Peace.